Thank you. Welcome to another exciting episode of What the FinTech, recorded live from the vibrant earth at Bangkok from Medhy 2020 Asia. Today we have an incredible guest joining us, Germaine Tan from DarkTrace. So let's get started and start this discussion here. Hey Germaine, how are you?
Hi, Medhy. I'm good. I'm really excited to be here at Medhy 2020 Bangkok. It's a huge event. The stages look amazing, so really excited to walk around later as
It
well.
was great to see you on stage. Thank you very much for being the moderator of that cybersecurity panel discussion.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like the panelists get the harder work, but the moderator sometimes can be quite tough as well, right?
Definitely. But you had the great speakers. You prepared it well.
Definitely.
It was very
definitely.
interesting.
Very insightful. I learned so much. And I had front row seats.
Yeah. So it's a good introduction for this podcast because you are working for DarkTrace, right?
Yes.
So you are doing cybersecurity. But before we go to what is doing DarkTrace, can I ask, who are you? What have you done before? And how did you start your journey with DarkTrace?
My name is Germaine Tan, and I've been working at DarkTrace for quite long now. I think about coming to 7 years. It was my first job out of uni, and I got really lucky. I think I really got really lucky in this age, I guess. I got a job that my background was in civil engineering, and at that time in cybersecurity, it was hard to find a job if you didn't have a background. So the company took a chance on me, and I hope it paid off. So I started as an analyst in DarkTrace, moved on to manage the Singapore team and then the APAC team. And in that role, I was also the principal consultant for the region, working with customers all around APAC, trying to help them, achieve their cyber goals, whether it's related to DarkTrace or not. DarkTrace is a technology, but at the same time, I think the company is coming from a space where we really want to help our customers get to a place where they can get to. And then if we are part of that journey, then we'll be glad to make it a partnership.
It's very good. You always work in Asia for them.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Based in Singapore, or did you travel for other countries?
So I'm based in Singapore. I spent a year abroad when I was studying, but mostly based in Singapore. I travel a lot around the region. But yeah, Singaporean through and through.
Very good. When I was doing my research for this podcast, your profile and DarkTrace, I understood that DarkTrace is creating and building a secure digital environment for everyone. But also, it's a big player on cybersecurity. So maybe can you introduce a bit more what is DarkTrace, what you are doing, and how you are creating this kind of secure digital environment?
In the past, I guess, couple of years, cybersecurity has garnered a lot of media attention, right? You see a lot of headlines. Like people are actually starting to discuss cybersecurity. When I first started, it was hard to even have those conversations. We don't have those conversations over dinner, but now it becomes something you talk about with your friends. And that's because, I guess, the impact of cyber disruption is quite big, right? If it's the small parts, is maybe things shut down, or some people say that's small if information gets leaked. But the impact of what could happen following that could be really, really big. And that's why I think it's such a major cause of concern now. And the problem that DarkTrace really wants to address is to help companies achieve cyber resiliency by ridding the world of cyber disruption. So it's a big task, but I always think it's about the effort and will to work towards that goal. When I always like to talk about the DarkTrace. I think we are we are an AI company. We just happen to be doing cybersecurity, but we could very well apply this approach and some of these AI techniques that we do to other areas as well. So what we do is that we use AI to understand each individual organization, what it means to be this organization, to help them detect and respond to threats, but also to take a preventative approach, a more proactive approach rather than reactive. And at the same time, also helping them heal from any kind of threats that they have experienced.
Very interesting. The panel discussion this morning was also about cybersecurity and digital assets. And when you look at the security, it's kind of a paramount of, dealing with digital assets, basically. Yeah. So I saw on the website and some of the content about DarkTrace that you ensure the security of your clients with transaction and data. on this. Could you elaborate a bit more? What do you do here? What is the impact, and how you ensure that the security is here?
With security is it's a small word, but it's a huge task.
Yes.
What does it mean to be secure? Traditionally, security doesn't have the best reputation in terms of like from an operations perspective or like a growth perspective. The first part of the big part of security, firstly, is visibility. So gaining visibility of all your digital assets. So we talk about how digital assets is a big thing, but the definition of digital assets has now expanded way more. It's very hard for security teams to maintain visibility, control on all of these digital assets on their environment, right? So we see things like, especially in the IoT space, basically anything that's smart becomes a digital asset, whether it's like a drawing pad or web camera, all these kind of is part of that, and it's a huge struggle for security teams to maintain control. And what we do is that we allow visibility across the entire digital estate, regardless of where you are, if it's a physical asset, if it's in the cloud, if it's in the email space, if it's in the factory floor, for example. We give you visibility. We enable security teams to detect these threats as they come in real time, and respond to them. And I talked about, that proactive approach and healing from these threats as well. But what makes us so good at what we do is that instead of applying, AI on the rest of the world, we use AI to understand you and your sense of self. So if we are able to use AI to understand a baseline of what normal activity looks like, anytime something anomalous happens, we're able to apply security context and say, hey, is this unusual or not? I think where this is very powerful is the types of use cases that we are very, I think we really do quite well at, which are things like they're what we call unknown threats. So the unknown means that you don't know when it's going to happen and you don't know in what form. So things like insider threats, zero-day attacks, supply chain attacks. These are very challenging for traditional tools to look at, to understand, to detect. And we're able to do that off the bat just because, and in real time, because we use AI to understand you and what you do.
Interesting. During the discussion, and not you spoke about like remote work and the increasing of like remote work for employees and companies.
Yeah.
Quick question, because every time we understand from the companies the best practice they put in place, like the 2 days work from home. But in terms of cybersecurity, in terms of security challenges, new threats have emerged, right? So how, DarkTrace adapt and work with its customer to allow people to work remotely and face this challenge?
The work from home discussion is a huge one, I guess, for a lot of people. I guess from an operations and management standpoint, people are saying like you have to go back to work to increase productivity. Some people who look for jobs specifically look for like a work from home component now. Obviously, management of these assets is quite hard, but also managing the access of these digital assets is also very challenging. So imagine if you're working from home, you have your laptop open, you just go off to grab a drink, you go to the washroom, and your kid comes in or your partner comes in and starts to use your laptop, right? It's really hard to control like what's happening in that space, who has access to this device, or even things like if you're working from a cafe, for example, connecting to the Wi-Fi, who has control over this Wi-Fi router, right? What we call the increasing attack surface makes it hard for a lot of security teams. So what we did very quickly during, I guess, the COVID period was to firstly maintain that visibility, because that's the basis of everything, right? Maintain that visibility with our customers, in terms of getting the traffic in, because people are not going to offices anymore. How can we get those traffics from the endpoint? Is it going to be from the VPN, from the cloud? Just depending on where they're situated at.
Very good, very good. Do you want to speak about regulation and compliance?
Yeah, we could
Yeah.
talk about that. This
So,
was a topic that,
no, please go ahead.
yeah, no, this is a topic that we also briefly talked about in the panel discussion, right?
Yes.
Um, I had a peer tell me, it was in the security industry as well. Compliance, it feels like every couple of years, some new regulation or guidance comes out. It's basically the same as what is existing. They add like a couple of few new clauses, like you have to do this, this, and that, and says like, hey, this is brand new. But no one actually goes back to assess and see like which older ones do we need to retire, which ones are not as relevant anymore. And then, because we were just talking amongst us in the group, someone else also said that, like, the question is how many companies realistically are really doing all of this all the time. And I don't speak for any company specifically, but in my experience, in terms of what I'm hearing from, I guess, practitioners, is that like sometimes it just boils down to the audit, the checklist process. And that's quite sad, right? Because when you see where compliance and frameworks start from, they're giving you that, I guess it's a starting point, but for frameworks, there are starting points, but for compliance, they're like, if you're in line with this, at least you're to a certain standards where your consumers can trust you. It's about giving that visibility. But in practice, it becomes very transactional, if you don't mind the pun. And I personally don't know if there's a real solution to this, because compliance is one of the oldest things in the book, right? They have been around for the longest time. How can we get better at increasing those conversations? Is it more government, interactions? Is it more interactions between the policymakers and the practitioners? How do we improve that process? Because I hear a lot of people talking about it, but how do we set up these, systems where this collaboration can take place? In the financial industries specifically, compliance is, I guess, one of the most important things when I speak to security teams. Everything needs to be transparent. And the challenge here is when you're using AI technologies, where sometimes A plus B equals to C, but sometimes A plus B equals to dog, right? Or sometimes A plus B equals to McDonald's, right? It's really hard to, for some AI technologies, it's really hard to predict exactly why this is the answer. If we knew, it kind of would be automation, not really that highest level of AI that we're achieving. And I think this is one of the biggest struggle for a lot of security teams, which is why with DarkTrace, what we want to, I guess, improve, I guess this is what we have, right? We want to give transparency to the usage of AI. And I guess the industry calls it explainable AI, where you understand what's the AI thinking, what's the thought process of the AI. And I've seen a lot of security teams actually use it as training tools as well. So they'll hand someone new, this is what the AI did, like reverse engineer it, understand why the AI did ABC, and then learn from it.
Very good. You touch a lot of interesting things, and I have like a lot of things going through my mind. But one of the question is like, have you or did you feel that a recent regulatory change have significantly impacted your business and your operations? And how did you respond of this?
That's a good question. I don't think in terms of security, we are ISO 27001 compliant. And
What it means? I don't know. Sorry.
It's one of the most strict, I guess, compliance standards in the cybersecurity industry. It means that this company's processes and the way they handle secure operations is in a secure way. And coming to DarkTrace, like when I first started working, the first 2 years, I was so paranoid about everything I did, because this is a security company, and from day one, when I entered the company, everything was like everything was about security. Like, don't mix your work with your personal life. Even communications had to be very separate. So if I was speaking to a colleague, I had to only reach out on the work phone, which is great for work-life balance. But sometimes in terms of communications, it can be quite hard. Given that we're compliant to that level, we did a lot of changes. Like I can't speak for the internal security team directly, but I believe to be compliant with that standards and be given that compliance, there's a lot of work that the organization does. On the other hand, there's also regulatory around the use of AI, I think, recently. There's been a lot of conversations around how do you assess AI tools that you use? How do you control the use of AI within your environment? How do you assess some of these AI vendors that you're using? And that's something that we also ask ourselves, right? And we also challenge our customers to ask us to explain to you how the AI does. If you're working with, other technologies that use AI as well, have those conversations, ask them how it works. And I think the transparency is what helped us to maintain the trust that we have with the market.
Very good. Well, can we also discuss about maybe insurance and cybersecurity? It's something I draft of my question when I was preparing this.
Insurance is really interesting. A lot of my peers in the industry could probably talk for a whole day just with this topic. I have to put a disclaimer. I am an absolute advocate for health insurance, for example. I really believe in it. I grew up having it. So I love the concept of insurance in general. But when it comes to cybersecurity, it's really hard to assess, right? On one hand, so attackers, right, they work like a business. They're going to go to where the money is and where the money will come out of people's pockets. So if you've been attacked and this is the cost of maybe, for example, paying the ransom, or if attackers manage to get sensitive data and you have to pay a fine, and maybe that comes from a certain insurance policy, they're going to be really excited. Like, they're going to continue to target. They might intentionally target organizations with cyber insurance because they know that, hey, these people, the money's not coming out of their own pockets. They're going to go to the insurance company for it. I can attack them. We can sidetrack a little bit, but when it comes to, for example, ransom payments, right? Because it's all about earning money for them. They also intentionally set the ransom amount to an amount that's like slightly below what they would have to pay if they went to the police. So, for example, if the penalty is $1,000, they might say, okay, pay us $900. So from a business perspective, it makes sense to pay the ransom than to own up to your mistake and correct it, right? So a lot of companies kind of do that. On the other hand, there's also what they'll do is that they will track who has paid ransom before and tend to target them again. I can't remember what was the research, but there was a research done that tracked organizations that were hit with ransomware, and they found that they tend to be attacked again. And it really boils down to the attackers going like, hey, I was successful once, I'll try again. Or I'll try in another way, because they've paid money before.
Do you have like some misconception from the business in terms of cybersecurity and insurance?
Sorry?
Do you have like some misconception or example of misconception of the businesses when it comes to cybersecurity insurance? And if yes,
I don't think it's a misconception. It's just part of me understands why cyber insurance is relevant, right? Because, for example, when it comes to risk management, you need to quantify it. And that's where the insurance comes in, because it's quantifying the risk that you might experience and charging you a premium for it. But when we're talking about cybersecurity, it feels a little bit immoral to put a price tag on it, because it should be done regardless of the price. So I don't know if there's a proper way to measure this, but some organizations, it's also possible to imagine, for example, as a security team, I'm going to be like, or head of IT, oh, I mean, I have insurance. I've paid for cyber insurance. I paid this amount of premium. I can predict how much I need to pay per month, per year. So if I get hit, that's fine. And then they can start to have a false sense of security, in a sense, if you're part of the pun. It's hard to quantify this, but you can certainly imagine that thought process, maybe even subconsciously behind what some of these people are thinking. I'm quite on the fence on it, because I think it's a really nice way to quantify and say like, oh, this is the amount of risk. This is how we mitigate. Where I see it being used the best is that insurance is part of the policy just to mitigate some of the costs and the risks. But their main policy and strategy is still with a really robust resiliency program.
Understood. Thank you for the clarity here. When I was also doing my research and preparing this interview, I saw like you also help with blockchain ecosystems and digital assets. So I would like to ask you a couple of questions about interoperability in the tech ecosystem. So this is very crucial, right? But I also see that DarkTrace can facilitate between the different blockchain platforms and protocols. How do you do it?
So I think the way we protect these financial organizations is not directly through, I guess, the blockchain or the protocols. If you think about, I mean, I'm not the best expert in these kinds of financial terms, but a lot of its transaction is really logs and data, right? And it's important to make sure that, for example, if I said I put in this amount of money, I've bought this, it's properly documented. And how do you ensure that no one has tampered with it, right? It's definitely stored somewhere. And what DarkTrace does is that it gives you visibility around everything that's happening around these, for example, servers or devices, so that these key assets you can detect as threats are happening. You can also take a proactive approach and say, like, for example, this is my crown jewel in my network. I really want to protect the integrity of this server. It stores all my important transaction information. How can I take a proactive approach to say, where are the hidden attack paths that an attacker can take to compromise this device? How can I stay ahead and block these paths before they're exploited? Yeah.
Very interesting. Where do you see the future of digital security or digital asset security and management heading right now?
We've been talking about resiliency for a long, long time, right?
Yes.
But the industry has as well. We all understand resiliency. I think it's about shifting the operations and the technology to be in line with that. There are multiple parts of resiliency. There's the real-time reactive parts, where the industry has done really, really well. So any form of detection and response, we've had a lot of experience with it, regardless of the people, the technologies that are in the market, the processes as well. We got that covered, but still not enough. So recently, what I've seen, the industry moving towards a more proactive security. And what does proactive mean? It's hard to talk about that because being proactive means you're staying ahead of what's going to happen, but nothing technically has happened yet. And how do I allocate my time, prioritize my resources? This is a really hard part. And I guess the way DarkTrace approaches it is that we understand what are some of the existing threats that's out there. We relate that to your environment, and we're trying to see if, let's say, we put ourselves in the shoes of an attacker, and I wanted to attack, company XYZ. What are the paths that I can take to cause you harm, cause you pain, cause you damage? Given this information, internal teams can then say, okay, I'm going to block this path. I'm going to put extra visibility on top of this path, more resources here and there. I'm going to move away from this path. And that's really where the proactivity comes from.
And what are the new features or technologies that DarkTrace is developing to stay ahead of the future landscape?
So, two main parts, I think. We have been doing detection and response for a long time. What's not really new, I think it's just become more of an industry need in the past few years, especially in the critical infrastructure industry. So anything like your banks, your utility companies, what's considered essential organizations, they have a lot of operation technology. So the OT space, in the email, in the cloud, these are things we look at. But I really wanted to share two main parts. The first one is what I talked about, proactive security. So it's what we call end-to-end. We map out the attack paths into your organization that gives you maximum damage. And the other part is heal, where we help you to recover from an attack, right? And it's all AI generated, and it helps to remove any kind of human bias that may exist in the original processes.
Very cool. Thank you very much, Germaine. It was a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
Like other people need to come on this podcast today. So we will let them having the booth, but it was great to see you at Medhy 2020. Thank you very much for being the amazing moderator this morning on the panel discussion. Last question for you. How people can reach out to you if they want to know more about you or DarkTrace?
Yeah, of course. Definitely my LinkedIn profile. I'm on LinkedIn, or maybe I can see some of your contact information that you can put it on your podcast
Will
as well.
do. Thank you very much. Have a nice day today.
Thank you.